Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series podcast, but this is a bit more of a special podcast because today we're going to be talking about the BioCup 2019. So this is some of the early stuff for my coverage of the contest this year, and we're going to be talking about sort of running you through how the contest works, answering some sort of more frequently asked questions, kind of giving a bit of a rundown on some of the judges' thoughts, things that they're looking for as a judge, stuff that's happened in the past with the contest, things that you can keep in mind so that you can really maximize your chances of winning, but also maximizes your chance of just having fun and really getting the most out of the contest this year if you're planning on entering. And if not, you get to see some cool mocks and listen to some dudes speak about Lego, so it's the perfect thing to do while you're building. But anyway, let me introduce you to my guest today, and that is none other than Mitch Henry. We were going to do this podcast with Patrick, but somebody, mainly me, only me, forgot to charge his phone last night, and his phone died, and alarm didn't go off, and now Pat's busy. But we'll have Pat in a future pod, and we'll probably have multiple people in future pods, so you can stay tuned for that. But besides the point, welcome Mitch Henry. Good to talk to you again. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm annoyed that my phone went off later, but I'm good. It's raining. It's raining like a lot, like way more than it normally does in Perth. But it's good. So you might hear that as the podcast goes on. But yeah, you are one of the judges for this year's BioCup. And so I wanted to specifically have a chat with you about things that you as a judge want to just sort of let everyone know, stuff that you're looking for as a judge, as well as just kind of answering a lot of questions that have been on people's minds kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of let you take the reins here because I know you've kind of prepared a little bit of a list of things to chat about. Yeah, do you want to run the audience through some of that if you can, please?
Yeah, sure. No problem. BioCup is a tournament style building contest. It was originally run on mock pages, and I think was it 2011? I think it's around that time.
When it started, was 2011? You were saying?
Yeah, I think on mock pages.
I believe that's correct. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Lasted a couple of years, and then 2017, when I kind of came back into the community, sort of wanted to run it again, and we've been doing it ever since then. This is our third year with myself as host/judge, and like a big like part of it is not only like seeing who's quote unquote best of the best, but also just like really bringing the community together. Just kind of a nice explosion of good mocks. I think it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And there's incentives, there's prizes. Last year we started doing a raffle. We're doing it again this year, and it's been a lot of fun bringing everyone together to run this contest.
Yeah, I mean something that I've spoken about it a bit in other stuff, how people will sort of say that, because there's no actual Lego sets you can buy anymore of Construction, that, Bionicle's dead or whatever. But, like, I always find that every year when BioCup does roll around, like last year we got, like, 200 or something entries into the first round, and then, of course that continued across with multiple different rounds as more and more people got knocked out or people advanced forward and stuff. But that's still so many entries and so many cool mocks that came out of the contest that it's like there's Bionicle's still alive and thriving because of BioCup and just the fact that the community kind of comes together at this time, and a lot of sort of more inactive builders will come out of the not building anything and start to make some incredible stuff. And yeah, it's a really good time of the year because if you love Bionicle, like, you're going to get a lot of it in that time period.
Yeah, like you were saying, you had people who were kind of coming out of sort of I don't want to say retirement, but they just weren't building a lot. I think that's a big part of the appeal of BioCup, is having those people kind of come back and having like new faces who no one had ever seen before or never even had an online appearance, and then just kind of came out of the woodwork and were like doing a real good job. I noticed a lot more of that last year than with the 2017 Cup, and that was really exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure this year will definitely build off of that, like the success of the 2018 BioCup for sure, which is great. And you kind of touched upon that there of how people were you sort of said never had like a face in the community kind of thing, and now they're kind of coming out and more prominent with it kind of thing. Like, I had a few people who messaged me and they sort of said, I've not built or posted on, I've been building for years, but I've never posted it online. I've been sort of like too afraid to, or I just haven't kind of thing. And so when BioCup rolled around, it's like, cool, I've kind of got the courage now to post because everyone else is, and I want to be a part of this because it's really cool. And then they'd sort of send me a message and be like, yo, like, it's actually really cool posting. Like, it was nice to finally get the courage to do that. And they're proud of how that worked out. So for those people who do watch and don't post online, but are thinking about it and stuff, maybe BioCup's the kind of good jumping on point for that, which is great, you know.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just a good way to grow the community, I think. Yeah. But let me not interrupt you. What were some of those frequently asked questions and other various points about the BioCup that you wanted to touch upon?
Yeah. So I have a list, just real brief things that we kind of got a lot of last year and a little bit of this year, not as much. So without further ado, so question number 1, how do I enter the contest? As many of you have probably seen by now, the theme for the preliminary round is what we're calling scary monsters. All you have to build is something that you think is scary, elicits fear, something gross, whatever you want to say. The round will last 14 days, and we'll have 13 days of build time, and 1 day for the judges to just finalize all their scores. The preliminary round will be based on a scoring system, and the maximum amount of points you can earn is 30 per judge, which means the total points you can earn are 150. The highest scoring contestants will move on to round 1, and the lowest scoring contestants will be dropped. And that's all you need to do to enter the contest.
Sweet. Just on that as well, because you know, saying first preliminary round there is all about, you know, scary monsters and fear and stuff. So this podcast will be up pretty soon, and then a few days after that, I'll post a specific BIS episode on scary monsters and fear and stuff like that. So if you're sitting there in the audience now and you're like, oh, that sounds cool, I want to enter this thing, but what the heck do I build? Got some inspiration ready for you, so don't you worry. But anyway, that sounds great, Mitch. You continue on with where you were going.
All right, thank you. Next question is, how do I enter the raffle and how can I promote the contest? You may notice in the Flickr group that there is a discussion that mentions a raffle. So if you are interested, we have a very generously donated copper Mask of Victory Kanohi How that was created by fellow community member Socketball Masks, who casts his own custom masks. The How is a resin cast mask with a copper powder finish, giving a nice shiny appearance. And if you're interested in winning, you can promote the contest on any social media platform and give us a link to that promotion in the same discussion where we announce the raffle. And then if you enter the preliminary round, having done both of those will make you eligible for the raffle.
Sweet. When does the raffle get drawn then? Is that like post round 1, or is that like at the end of the contest or something?
The raffle winner will be drawn at the end of the preliminary round. We want to make sure everyone who enters has a chance at winning it.
Sounds good. Very cool. Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty awesome prize as well, especially because it is very... I mean, Socketball's masks are so... some of the colors that he's able to get with them and like the molds that he has and stuff, they look so like the real thing, but just in a different color or whatever. So like the fact that, you know, you can win very much an exclusive mask out of it's pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of the old Lego contests they used to do where you could win like a chrome How as a legitimate real Lego chrome How kind of thing. Yeah, like that was a pretty sweet prize back in the day, and this is pretty much kind of embodying that, which I think is really cool. And I'm sure whoever wins it will, you know, like bring it to Brick Fair or some Lego convention, or just post pictures online and just, you know, have massive bragging rights, which would be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we thought it would be fun to kind of incorporate the copper Mask of Victory thing from the Bionicle lore into the contest. We thought that was just a nice touch. So I'm excited for whoever happens to win. A little jealous. It's a really pretty mask. I like it a lot.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. What's next?
Third question is, can I use modified Lego elements or enter digital MOCs? Kind of a two-part question. For modified Lego parts, Lego elements, it's a bit complicated. If you modify the part in such a way that it matches another existing Lego piece, like say removing the print off of a part that also comes unprinted, then we're allowing that because that's technically something that someone else could also have. But if you're modifying the element in such a way that it was not manufactured, then we won't be allowing it. Like, say, for example, cutting a Lego cloth. It's just not fair to the other contestants, and we're not allowing it.
That's fair enough.
For digital MOCs, we talked a little bit about it, but we decided against it, even though you could limit yourself with digital MOCs to parts that only exist in color Lego has manufactured them in, or other things like that. Digital mocking doesn't account for like the amount of one part that you might have. So if you're to use something like Lego Digital Designer, you have like in theory an endless amount of I don't know, say CCBS, like spring green 4-length CCBS shells. Like that's a kind of a rare piece, and if you're using Digital Designer, you have kind of an unlimited amount of those.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't take into account like the clutch power of certain pieces, or like if the MOC could actually physically hold itself up under its own weight. So for reasons like that, we decided against doing digital MOCs. If it had its own section, maybe we'd think differently, but I think it's just simpler to kind of just disallow digital entries.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's fair enough.
Next question, where can I find the round themes? In the Flickr group, under the discussion section, we'll be announcing all of the round themes as they come out. So just kind of stay tuned with the contest, keep following it, and you'll be able to see who has passed, who's fallen out, what our next themes are going to be, what your matchups are going to be with other people as the contest continues, and just any other information you need to know, it'll all be in the Flickr group. It's all right there.
But that is also one thing, as well as the fact that like certain rounds won't be announced until, you know, they're ready to be announced, because then it's, you know, unfair to some degree, so that, you know, everyone's on an equal playing field, everyone has the same time period to build within that theme. So you may not have you may not hear what the round is for a little bit until the judges are ready to announce it. So it is also that thing of like, you know, stay tuned kind of thing. But now that the preliminary round has been announced kind of thing, then there's no real issue with, you'll kind of always at least know what's going on, because sort of in the initial period before, it was kind of like, oh, well, what's the round yet? It's like, well, we haven't technically started, but, you know, now everything's begun, so we're all in we're at a good stage kind of thing. So yeah, it's that thing of like, sometimes you will have to play the waiting game and be a bit patient kind of thing, but that's easy to do.
Mm-hmm. So our next question is, how long do the rounds last? Last year, we had all the rounds start on a Friday, and they lasted 2 weeks, a full 14 days. And I think they had like 2 days of judging time afterwards. Or no, yeah, 2 days of judging time afterwards. We're shortening it up a bit this year, partly because we're starting on a different day. I think we're starting on a Monday this year, and the preliminary round will have a full weekend and 1 day of the next weekend. And that's 14 days with 13 build days. All the rounds afterwards will be 13 days with 12 build days. We're kind of shortening it up a little bit just to kind of streamline everything. Around the end of the contest, Brick for Virginia will be happening, and there's going to be, I expect, quite a number of people going to that. Last year, there were some issues with contestants who were there and had a lot less time to build because they were away from home, away from their parts. So we're kind of anticipating that a bit. Last year and the year before, during the final rounds, the general interest in the contest was kind of dying down near the end, and we're thinking the long rounds kind of contributed to that. So we're thinking by shortening them just a bit, we'll be able to keep some of that momentum, that hype up as much as possible. And really, when you get down to it, the rounds are only being shortened by like 2 days at most. I don't think contestants will feel it too much I don't think they'll feel too much crunch on build time.
Yeah, awesome. That's pretty good. And I mean, I definitely think as well, you know, that because the contest is being run, it's different in Australia, but the contest is being run during your summer holidays, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's you know, for the most part, most people entering, you know, should have a decent enough amount of time. Of course, if you're working or you've got a few other things going on kind of thing, that may not always be the case, but, you know, for the most part, it shouldn't be too difficult to be able to, you know, whip out a few mocks in time for when the contests are going kind of thing. So yeah, and it's that too. It's you know, you're making cool stuff with Lego. You know, there won't be any kind of well, you might feel a little bit stressed and stuff, but at the end of the day, you're just having fun doing your fun hobby. So, you know, don't let that get to you too much. Just sit back, relax, and have fun building.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So we only got a couple questions left. The next question, can I enter MOCs that I've already built? So, like last year, we will be allowing that. However, if you do that in the preliminary round, this will actually disqualify you for the raffle. This is to keep people from just kind of like spamming things into the contest, and like, you know, we think it's only fair to people who are building original things or who are like interested in competing in the whole contest. Not saying that everyone would do this, but allowing people to enter older MOCs might encourage them only to do that only for the raffle, and we kind of want to avoid that. But you are allowed to enter MOCs that you've already built as long as they fit the theme of the round.
Which I think is a good thing, because like, especially if you're not too sure about whether or not you want to enter, it's good to just toss up something that does fit the theme that you've already built, and, you know, you kind of take the stress away from it, and then then you're kind of in. You're a part of the hype train, and you're enjoying the ride kind of thing. And then, you know, if you do make it to the next round, you're like, oh hey, actually, you know what, this is kind of fun. Yeah, now I'll start building. So I think that's a really cool thing of kind of just being a nice in for people. So yeah, it's I think it's good that's an option for sure.
How many photos do I need? So this has been something of a point of contention the past few years, both, I think, for contestants and definitely for judges. The past few years, we've wanted at least 3 photos of your mock. In 2017, we wanted all of them on Flickr. In 2018, you only needed 1 on Flickr, but you could have more on other platforms. And this year, we're completely doing away with that theme, with that idea. You only need 1 photo on Flickr for your mock. The rule was there because it made more sense on mock pages where the format of the website was different and you could have multiple photos on one page. But with Flickr, because you can only display 1 photo per page, it just made things complicated to try and scroll through their feed to make sure they had the photos or go to another platform where they had more photos, and it just was becoming more trouble than it was worth. And especially for people who, if you're fully capable of showing off the mock in 1 photo, there's really no reason to ask for more. So
That's fair.
we decided to just drop the rule. It wasn't really working. We didn't need it.
Yeah. So what's the case with, you know, say someone posts, 2 or 3 different images of the mock, just because, you know, they enjoy posting multiple images. That's still fine as long as they just, you know, sort of show off the one image that kind of clearly illustrates the mock. So it's not the case that you can only post 1 picture. You can post multiple if you so please.
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely.
Perfect. Easy.
Final question. What are the prizes? So we want to keep the prizes kind of under wraps for right now, kind of keep the suspense. But what I can say is that the prizes are going to be a bit bigger and better than what we had last year. So stay tuned.
Sounds very good. Sounds good. And I mean, like last year we were getting prizes like, what was it? Like the Umarak the Hunter was one of the sets that you could win. You could win like one of the Uniters and one of the little companions that they got, and a few other kind of pretty awesome G2 Bionicle sets. So, you know, if you're saying the bigger and better stuff, I imagine that they'll be in line with that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think people will be pleasantly surprised when we announce them.
That's awesome. And I'll be sure to, when you guys do announce it, I'll post a sort of separate video on the channel and sort of go like, hey, this is the prizes you can win. So like if you're not already excited to do BioCup stuff, then here's more of an incentive because you'll be winning pretty good stuff.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, awesome. So since that's it for all the questions, there's some of my own questions that I've got for you. In terms of, just because you are one of the judges of the BioCup, for people who are entering and, you know, they want to know what some of these judges are thinking, because really that's what it's down to, right? You're building a mock to fit what the judges are interested in. So as a judge, with the way that the rounds are going, what sort of stuff are you specifically looking for out of the mocks that people make?
Well, with the panel we have this year, a lot of them are like kind of character builders. We have like me and who, Pat, who we were planning to record with, and Jackson, who's a judge this year. So, with a lot of people like those, you're looking for stuff that has personality and has character. But we have I'll meet the judges section of the Flickr group where each judge kind of highlights the kind of things that they like to see in a mock, kind of what they're expecting. So if you haven't read that already, highly recommend reading that. Should be very informative.
Very much so. Yeah, that's cool. Because I remember in the past with the 2018 BioCup, like for example, the first round of that year of the BioCup was elements, and so people were building mocks that that was literally all you were given, was just sort of elements, and it's kind of you do with that as you please. And people would make sort of cool Toa of fire, so that's obviously one of the Bionicle elements kind of thing, or people would build like some sort of elemental beast, spooky flame elemental thing from like a fantasy game or something like that. But then people would of course take the theme and put it in a new direction. So some people would make like the element of surprise, and so it would be this guy who was like a Jack in the Box and balloons and things popping out. Or someone built, or one of my favorite entries was they built Kendrick Lamar, and he had an album called Element. So making a bit of a joke with the mock, which was a great way of sort of taking the theme. And so that's definitely something you guys are still looking for, is taking the concept and really stretching it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Kendrick Lamar mock is easily one of my favorites from last year's competition. That's a perfect example of, having a really creative take on a theme.
But of course, that said, if you are, so for example, this one is about, scary monsters and fear and stuff like that. So if you are, planning something with building it, there's nothing wrong with building, a spider or, just a big scary monster or whatever, or, taking references from pop culture. Maybe you want to build the clown from It or whatever. Pennywise, I believe his name is. I always forget. Nothing wrong with building something like that. But, if you do stretch the theme in some way, you're definitely going to get points for, creativity and really thinking outside the box. But that said, if you build a really good spider, you're probably still going to pass, because as long as you've made a cool looking mock, then that's fine, But if you are looking for that additional advantage, maybe spend some time brainstorming about ways that you could really stretch the theme, but still have it be related in some fashion.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Ultimately, the most important thing is, does the mock look good? Is it aesthetically pleasing? Is it have a good use of color, have good use of shape and texture? And that is definitely the main thing. But you're right when you say that a really creative theme on top of that can really, really push you far.
Totally, yeah. And yeah, just to stress once again, that's not the be-all and end-all, but it does help, which is cool. In terms of kind of the ways that people can approach the contest, like I've mentioned before in a couple of the other episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series, as well as the other coverage that I've done for the Biocup so far, where I've sort of mentioned, remember this is a contest and it's about having fun, and it's less about, winning. And sure, people will definitely want to win whatever the first prize is, and want to enter the raffle to get that prize and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you're making your mocks with the intent of I'm going to win and beat the competition, but in doing it you're having no fun and it's just a drag and it's full of stress and it's just blah, kind of like what's the point, right? Like, you're entering the contest to have fun, and while you do want to win, to some degree that can be sort of a secondary point of, I'm here to have fun, and if I win, awesome, or it's, I'm going to enter to win, but I'm going to have fun while I do it, kind of thing. What sort of ways do you recommend people kind of approach the contest so that, the stress doesn't get to them too much, or that, they aren't sort of beating themselves up for, maybe not making something as well as they think that they could, or, maybe they don't make it into the next round, is any sort of advice that you have for people in those circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what you said. Ultimately, this isn't like a life-changing thing. It is just kind of it is just a contest kind of run by fans. It's meant to be kind of a celebration of the hobby.
I mean, ultimately, for me, like, it was good what you're saying. Like, ultimately, for me, I think that one of the most important things is, I touched upon it before, but I think it's a great point, and it's something that I forget it all the time, and it's something that's pretty easy to do, is to not take stuff personally. Like, if you do get knocked out of the round, remember that this isn't the judges being like, and this means you're a terrible builder. Like, no. It's not at all that, It's that thing of when you apply for a job or you audition for a role, if you're an actor or something like that. It's not, the people who are auditioning you, or the people who are trying to get you that job, they're sitting there with every fiber of their being going like, I hope this person is exactly what we're looking for. Because think about it. They're the guys who have to sit there for the whole day taking a bunch of applicants and hearing stuff. They're not sitting there being like, I want this guy to fail. They're going, please let this be the guy that I want so I can go home and not have to hire people. So the judges already have your best interests in mind. They want you to be the best that you can be, kind of thing. If you're going to go in wanting to win, go in wanting to win. Don't sit there being like, they already hate me, or da-da-da. That's not true. So it's that thing of go in and know that you be confident that you can win. Be confident that what you're building is the best thing ever and that the world needs to see it. And then, if you do get knocked out, then know that the judges were looking for something a little different and you just weren't that. That doesn't mean that you're bad in any way. What you built could have been perfect, but maybe it didn't quite fit the theme of the contest as well as something else did, or maybe it didn't, the ways that the judges score, maybe it just fell off slightly compared to something else. And it could be that thing, if you put that mock in another contest in a very different kind of context or situation, it might have won, or it might have got, a better score or something. It's just the fact that, somebody else fit the criteria a little bit better than you did kind of thing. So it's not a signifier of, hey, you suck, because that's straight up not true. So yeah, like if you are planning on entering, know that whatever you build is still valid and is still an awesome mark. And it could even make it on the Bionicle Inspiration series. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of reasons to enter, and even if you do fail, failure's never been a bad thing. Society holds up failure as this awful thing, but it's not. Failure is one of the best teachers you can ever have. So, if you do get knocked out of the contest, or heck, if you make it a bit forward, definitely reflect on what happened and kind of go, okay, well, what did I learn from that? How could I improve next time? And see where it takes you. That's the cool thing about the BioCup, is it is a awesome learning experience to see how you can improve as a builder, but it's also a time for you to have a lot of fun. And heck, even if you're not participating in it, it's a time of fun anyway, because you'll be seeing like hundreds of awesome Bionicle MOCs coming out of the blue, which will be great.
That was very well said. I don't think I could have said it better myself.
Thank you. But that's about it for just sort of general questions and stuff. But as this is the BIS podcast, we always talk about 3 MOCs. And so these ones are specifically going to be entries from the past rounds of the BioCup. So Mitch and I are going to have a bit of a chat about these. And of course, Mitch being a judge, he's going to sort of briefly touch upon what he likes about these MOCs from a judging perspective, I suppose. So you can kind of get a bit of an insight as to how he thinks, so that when you're building your entry for this year's cup, you can kind of get a little bit of an advantage there and know, okay, well, he's looking for this, so I'm going to put that in my MOC. And in general, kind of talking about some other stuff that's been in past rounds of the BioCup will be a bit helpful, so that you can just learn a little bit more about how the contest works, that sort of thing. And also you get to see 3 really cool MOCs, which is always awesome. So I reckon we should start with, let's start with Alex's MOC. So this is a MOC by Alex Park Designs and is called Bain Shadowfiend. So Mitch, you picked all of these MOCs. So what did you like about this?
So just for a little context, this was made for last year's preliminary round, the Elements theme. So his has kind of a mixture of two elements. He has like the Bionicle element of Shadow and the actual periodic table element of gold in this MOC. And it's kind of like this treasure-hoarding, greedy monster type creature thing. And I think the first thing that really jumps out at you is just this thing's like overall posture. And it's just got this like wonderful like arched back with all these spines sticking out of it. And like it's kind of like looking down, its tail is curved up, and it's like, it looks like it's kind of ready to pounce, or like it's crawling. It has this very natural looking shape to it. Its colors are very, I don't want to say bland, but they're very basic. You have this very stark contrast with the black body and the big gold like claws and wings, which is a excellent use of the Zactan blade, I might add.
Very much so.
And it just, overall, just kind of looking at it, you kind of know exactly what you're looking at from just a single glance, and it just has a nice presence to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, what you were saying before about how he's combined both, the gold aspect and the shadow aspects. Like, one, that itself is a very creative way of taking the element theme, because you've got the element of shadow and you've got the element of gold. So, multiple ways, and then putting them into one. But also taking notions of what shadow means and what gold means. Gold can be associated with greed or wealth or something. And so, and then shadow can also, to some degree, also be associated with greed, or sort of more with hunting or evil aspects. And both of those qualities have very much been embodied in this. So it's kind of interesting how, he hasn't gone with some sort of, like ethereal shadow, cloaked in mist and stuff like that, or like, some evil looking dude with wings or whatever. He's taken the qualities of those elements and then embodied them into the MOC. So, again, that's a cool way of approaching the MOC that isn't the sort of staple traditional thing that maybe other people have done. It's taking it to a slightly different level, and it's not the Kendrick Lamar thing of it's a massive departure from what it normally is. It's just a sort of subtle departure. And so maybe that's something to think about, with your sort of scary monsters and things like that. What sort of stuff do they embody? Or maybe you want to go maybe the opposite direction and go like, okay, well, building a scary guy, like, there's those people who exist in the real world who are big, strong, buff guys, but they're just teddy bears at heart. So maybe that's sort of something you want to build, is kind of taking it in a different direction, or thinking about the sort of qualities of those scary things, and trying and embodying those into the MOC a bit more as well, and kind of doing a bit of research as well, kind of spending some time brainstorming and thinking, because that's where you can really shine, is if you sort of put a bit more effort and thought into it. and sort of have justification for the choices that you've made behind what you've put into the mock, because that sort of stuff is, I imagine is what's going to really grab Mitch's attention and all the judges' attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, overall, yeah, like you were saying, this mock does have that awesome kind of lean, beast-like kind of stance and quality to it, and yeah, great use of those Zactan weapons there, and it's nice, you were saying he has very sort of stark, very, very sort of minimalist color scheme, but I think that kind of works because, yeah, the red really pops as a result, and then the gold also does as well, and, for being that more minimalistic color scheme, the sort of very strong popping colors is very effectively done and just looks great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With the whole thing being black, it just makes the reds redder and the gold just more shiny and noticeable. It's really, it's like you said, it's just an excellent use of minimalism.
Yeah, for sure. And again, that's another thing too. You might be sort of sitting here going, I want to enter the contest, but am I going to be able to go head to head with some of these more talented builders and stuff like that? And of course you can, believe in yourself and you can accomplish anything. I know it sounds cheesy, but it is actually true. But besides the point, we were just saying here, he has a very minimalist color scheme, but he has strong justification for why. So you yourself, you could build a very sort of small minimalist mock, and there's no reason that couldn't go toe to toe with this massive Titan build that has all this detail in it and blah blah blue, because yours might fit the theme a little bit better, or yours might just sort of have a very creative spin on it. So really, that's also another thing. If you're not too sure about your skills as a whole, one, have more confidence in yourself, because I'm sure you have amazing skills. But really make sure that your mock focuses on, you have strong justification for your choices, and that you have a really strong concept as a whole, because that's where you can very much shine that other people may not as well. So doing a bit of research, having a bit of a think about that's definitely something that will be in your favor for sure.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. Just kind of getting to some of the techniques of the mock. I really like how he's done the spines. He has that kind of, those middle three spines, all kind of aligned, but then he has the two shoulder spines. It just has this really, really wonderful, wicked curve to it, and I think it really does a lot. If it didn't have those shoulder spines, it'd really be missing something, I think.
That's a good point, yeah. I definitely find that with both system and Bionicle mocks. When people are able to achieve really interesting angles on a mock, that's when you can really take the mock up to an even cooler degree of being very visually impressive, because angles are not exactly easy to do on a mock. And so it could just be the way that you're naturally building it that you go oh, hey, I actually can get an angle here. Let me put something on it. Or you specifically factor in okay, I want to use some hinge plates, or use this sort of part that I can, create an angle with or something. And yeah, as a result, it creates, like you were saying, a really excellent part of the mock, because yeah, angles are a difficult thing to do on a sort of more blocky system that is Lego. So yeah, if you're able to achieve any kind of interesting angles or something like that, I would recommend you do so, because most of the time, in fact, probably all the time, I see awesome angles on a mock. That's when they shine.
Something else I think is interesting, because going back to angles, and what I like a lot about this one, there's so many sharp points on it, and going back to what I was talking about, I think the last time I was on this podcast, I was talking about shapes and character design, and all the points on this mock, a very angular, very pointy character generally elicits not really fear, but it's something that's you kind of want to stay away from. It's kind of a bad thing to be around. So a lot of villains in animation or very caricatured character designs are drawn with a lot of sharp points and sharp angles. Yes. With this mock, you're seeing a lot of those invasion from below spike pieces, and you have the Zactan blades with the claws and the little blades on the other end, and you have the Hero Factory the Jungle Year spines on its back, and even the Ultimate Doom mask for its head kind of points down into that snout. So they all kind of come together, and it's this very consistent, sharp, pointy angles that kind of give it this very menacing vibe.
Yeah. And I believe at the start of the podcast you were talking about, you'll be as a judge, you'll be looking for, interesting techniques, or, very nice texture play, or just, other various sort of technical aspects of how the mock is built. And I think this is a brilliant example of playing with textures and stuff, because like you were saying, he's using a lot of, very smooth textures throughout the mark, and then also using a lot of parts that have those very refined, sharp angles that very much fit with what you're saying about, having that to create very sort of sinister, evil looks to it. And I think that's something that you could factor in yourself as a builder entering the contest, is picking out specific pieces that, the textures that they have are more fitting for what you're doing. So, for example, because this is very sort of fear and horror based, maybe you want to have very sort of kind of like this mock, very sharp edges, maybe you even want very rough textures as well, because maybe it's a bit like a spider and it's a bit sort of hairy and gross, or it's like Bigfoot or something, and it's a more menacing looking, scary kind of monster. Or you're doing something like this, where it's a little bit more sleek and agile, but it's kind of like a Black Panther or something. It's very much like a kind of stalking animal that's going to pounce and attack you. So do that, think about what it is you're building, and then go, okay, well, what textures would that naturally have? Is it a bit sort of sharper or more smoother in texture? And, let me grab a bunch of pieces that have that look to them, and then implement that into the mock. And I mean, I imagine for the most part that would be perfect for the kind of texture play. Is that the sort of stuff that you are looking for as a judge there, Mitch?
Yeah, definitely very like intelligent, kind of logical design when you're kind of building things like that. I'd say that's definitely the kind of stuff we're looking for.
Fantastic. Yeah, awesome. Anything else on this mock that you wanted to chat about before we move on to the next one?
Just one more thing. I really like how
Sure.
I mentioned earlier, but I really like the kind of natural curve of this body of the mock.
Yes.
It's very much this like arch, and then you have like these big long arms and these tiny little legs. There's something very like it looks a bit weird, or it sounds a bit weird, and then you actually like see it. It looks very natural, looks very animalistic, and then kind of contrasting the curve of that body, like that kind of upward curve. You have the tail kind of coming back around the other direction, so it's like kind of leading your eye in this kind of weird S shape, and it's just this really. It just has such a good presence. I love the presentation of this mock. I love the build of it. Very, very, very well designed.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting you say that kind of S shape that it has, and how the lines of this mock very much lead you up and around and back again and stuff. That's really clever, especially because, like we're saying, this guy's a sort of more greedy, sinister character that looks like it sort of stalks you and stuff, and probably remains hidden in the shadows. And so the fact that sort of S shape that the body actually creates is actually kind of reflective of that. Sort of it's going up and down and back around and all over the place. Like, that's really, really clever kind of character design there, of giving it the sort of physical shape of something that is sort of very sneaky and all over the place and up and down and all around and stuff. That's actually, that's super cool, because literally, again, that's what I was saying before about justifying your choices. Literally every aspect of this mark is feeding into what it's trying to represent, which is really clever. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and like we've spoken a bit about that on some other podcasts you're on, like you were saying, like paying attention specifically to character design and focusing on the shapes, and this kind of leads back into texture and stuff, I suppose. But yeah, focusing on how the physical shapes and like elements on the body can actually communicate something about the character. And yeah, for sure, this is just a brilliant example of that. Yeah, no, Alex has done a great job. Anything else you wanted to say, or shall we move on?
I think that's it.
Yeah, cool. I think we've covered it very nicely. Perfect. So this next mock is by Dylan Meaves, and it is called The Living City of New Lindblom. Now, this one was entered into, again, last year's 2018 Bio Cup. Do you remember what round this was?
Yeah, I believe this was round 3. It was the future round, and he was given the Utopia sub-theme. So he decided to build this city that's like this sort of metropolis paradise type thing. And I mean, there's no words for this. I mean, he nailed it. This is exactly
100%.
what you'd expect out of a Utopia. It's just such, again, like the last one, there's just such presence to it. Just looking at it, it's
Yes.
like there's so much to talk about with it.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Well, certainly one thing that grabs me immediately is just the vast number of amazing part usages throughout this mock.
Yeah.
Whether it's that, I think that's like a Duplo crown in yellow on that tower sort of towards the bottom of the image.
Yeah.
using like that Elec head as this funky design on a skyscraper, or just sort of repeating a bunch of those triaxles and giving this interesting shape to the building in the middle there. And just almost every building has some very clever part usages. And especially too, some of these pieces I look at and I go, like, I have those orange dishes, the trans orange ones that have the printing on them on this building next to the yellow one. And they've sat in my collection since I bought that set when it was, I actually bought that on my birthday. I've always gone like, I don't know how the heck I can use these, but you know, he's used that and a whole bunch of other pieces that I myself go like, geez, these are difficult to use, and yet he's given them so much life and personality and put it into this, beautiful looking metropolis, like you were saying. It's lovely.
Yeah, you were mentioning all the crazy part uses. I actually wrote down a list of some of the more interesting ones that I thought.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, you mentioned the orange like disc pieces. That's that was a Revenge of the Sith set, I believe. It was like a droid. It's like a droid thing. I remember getting that, and I'm like you. I have no idea how I'm going to use those dishes. But another Revenge of the Sith piece that he's using is on the other end of the build. I think it's from the General Grievous and like Obi-Wan, the lizard thing. It's on like that set.
Yes.
On the trans clear building, he's using that for like the top of the dish of this like skyscraper. But the body of the skyscraper is made of Gorast wings, which I had just noticed the other day. And it's like, I can't imagine using Gorast wings on anything, let alone making a building out of them.
For sure.
I mean, that's just one fantastic part use. Something else I like is that I think every single building is a different color. Like, I don't think any of them are the same. And even if some of them are like 4 pieces, they're all like one focus of like one main color. Like, he has a whole building that's spring green. That's a new color that has so few pieces, and you make a whole thing out of it. And if you like look through a lot of the other photos, you'll see he has a bunch of like rare misprint masks kind of like strewn about. Like a yellow cow and a light blue transclear cow. There's 2 different buildings that are different shades of pearl gold. One that's made out of Knight's Kingdom parts, and one that's made out of the newer pearl golds like Hero Factory and Bionicle G2 pieces. Yes, yeah. The one building is blue, but it has kind of that marbled black and blue piece from Von Nebula, the top of the building. And like, there's one more building. It's really small. I think it's next to the trans orange building. It uses Crota pack lids to make the building. It's like, who would think to use that part? There's so much of that like repeated throughout this build. All the different buildings are just, they're so simple, but they use such interesting parts, and they all have a unique shape, and they all have a unique color to them. And it takes my breath away.
100%. Yeah. I love the point you made before about that transclear building with the Gorast wings, of how you're like, I only just noticed that, and this mock is almost a year old at this point. And I think that's a really interesting point to note, is to go back to the 2017 group for BioCup, or the 2018 group of BioCup, and just look through the mocks again, because there'll be stuff like that. Like, take a big long look at them, because you'll be like, oh geez, I never noticed that technique. How clever is that? And if you want inspiration, that's a great thing to do, is just to study the other images, especially study the stuff that's been done in the past BioCup, because, you know, pay attention to the people who got really far in the round. I mean, Dylan came 3rd last year, you know. You pay attention to what stuff they did so that you can do it yourself. And, you know, if it won once, it'll win again for sure. So yeah, really, really pay attention to that stuff, and not to plug my own stuff, but, you know, check out the 2018 coverage I did, because there'll probably be stuff that I mention in that you maybe don't see yourself, or maybe you do see it, and, you know, maybe I just provide a different context to it, or you've heard and thought exactly the same thing, and you'll have no new context. But that's still it, you know, just even just surrounding yourself with images and being kind of involved in conversation about this sort of stuff is perfect for your brain to be digesting ideas and spewing it out. And, you know, because I've mentioned it before, it's that thing, if you're ever struggling and you're not sure where to go next with something that you're making, it's just your brain saying like, hey, I need a bit more input, I need a few more ideas and a bit more inspiration. And so, go out, research stuff that's very similar to what you're doing, or, just take a look at some other mocks that people have made or whatever. And then suddenly your brain might be like, that's a cool technique for legs. Excellent. That might help me with what I'm doing. Like, awesome. That sort of stuff. And I mean, again, that's what Biss is. Biss is literally a series going, hey, are you struggling with a head design? Here's a head design episode. You're building a Paraka mock? I got an episode on that. Hopefully that helps you with what you're doing. So by all means, if you're ever stuck, there's multiple places that you can go. And if you need a bit more direct input, sadly, you can't really message the judges and ask for any input from them because they're the judges. They can't say that. But I'm not a judge, so feel free to message me and be like, hey, Ben, can I get a second opinion? Because I'll happily give it to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We also have like a small Discord dedicated BioCup server with
That's the one.
like a feedback and work in progress channel. So you can always ask other people who are competing what they think. And I wouldn't worry about them trying to like sabotage you. Everyone wants everyone else to do the best they can, and I know a lot of people who will be competing. They're more than willing to give you feedback on what you're making. So it's not like
For sure.
not a thing of like worrying about showing your hand. Everyone wants to help.
Yeah, exactly that. Because it's that. I'd rather be a part of the contest that, every single entry is just mind-blowing than, kind of being this thing of, like you were saying, of like people sabotaging you when you make a bad mock or something like that. Like, if people are even doing that, then it's like, well, this is going to be a bad contest, like I'd rather see just a wealth of incredible stuff. It's like whenever I walk into a convention and there's awards happening and I walk around and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much good stuff this year. And it's like, cool, it's going to be like a fun challenge to see who wins, because it's like there's a lot of good stuff. And, it's also the awesome thing of it's like, cool, I get to see a lot of good stuff, like I'd hate to go to the convention or in this case, participate in the contest and it'd be like, man, nothing here is that good, So yeah, be prepared to see a lot of cool stuff and be prepared to, get a lot of advice if you're in that Discord server, which I might have to join that too. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and if you're in any other groups, I mean, you don't have to be in our own personal server to get feedback on things. I mean, absolutely use whatever you already have to your advantage.
Yeah,
the point is, don't be afraid to kind of show people kind of what you're working on, because a lot of times a second opinion or just another pair of eyes can really help you kind of either refine what you have or give you an idea you hadn't even considered.
Precisely.
It can go a long way.
Exactly that. Yeah, very much so. Going back to the mock, one of the things I love about this is how it kind of takes a lot of notes from kind of just science fiction in general, or kind of like the mock kind of reminds me of like the Jetsons or just various science fiction things that I've watched or read or something. This kind of dome city and this beautiful utopia with like multicolored buildings and huge skyscrapers and really funky, weird out there shapes and stuff. I of course don't know the direct influence or inspiration that Dylan took when building this, but you can definitely see that there's some. It's like I would read some of those books as a kid where it would be like, and this is what the future of technology will be. In 5 years' time, we'll have hover cars, and it's like, where's my hover cars book? You lied. But they'd show all these like wild and crazy inventions that were going to be coming in the few years, and of course they never came. But just the aesthetic of them was so beautiful and so full of hope and imagination as to what the future would be. And I feel like this is so in that aesthetic.
Oh yeah.
And it's great. And what I've been talking about before with like, going out and doing some research and stuff, like, maybe there's a book you're reading right now or a comic or a movie that you've recently watched and you go, oh, hey, the big scary monster in that movie, that actually was pretty cool. Hey, maybe I could take some notes from that and put that into my big scary monster mock. Or maybe you've been watching a documentary on, the history of horror in theater, and you go, you know what, I might apply some of the things that they've done there. Maybe there's something with like the costume designers and the way that they specifically designed the mask on the villain of the movie or something, and you go, oh, well, some of the principles they use there, actually, that's something that I could easily put into my mocks as well. And so, don't be afraid to watch some, obscure, weird stuff, or just go on YouTube and Google something and watch, maybe like a 3 or 4 minute video, and that might teach you something, whether it's not even related to Lego at all, or it in fact is, It's like studying art history for me has actually informed a decent amount with how I build. And, of course that isn't related to Lego that much. I mean, you know, if you want to go into the debate about whether Lego is art and it does actually apply or not, that's up to you. But it's that thing of, learning about specific styles of art, like, Art Deco or Cubism and stuff like that. I've gone the techniques and principles and ideologies of that. When I've built certain things, I go, actually, I could embody some of that into some fashion. So I think this is a great example of that, of just looking at the other things that you enjoy or just other stuff around you in the world and going, actually, I can put that to one of my mocks there. And heck, that's another thing too, take a look at some of the things that the judges like. Mitch Henry is a big fan of movies himself, so maybe you want to put some little nods to certain movies in there, and you'll get a few extra points from Mitch because he'll very much appreciate that.
I'm not sure if I can confirm nor deny that, but I will say that, yes, inspiration very, very, very often comes from real life, and I would echo that statement of definitely look for things in real life that you enjoy or that you just happen to stumble across that you think can really help you with your builds. That I find that helps me personally, and a lot of other builders say the same. So definitely something to keep in mind and think about.
For sure. One other thing I love about this mock Dylan's done is just the kind of geometry with the sort of big kind of cube thing around, not cube, sorry, the big sort of cylinder around the city here, the big kind of dome. Mm-hmm. Just the geometry of that, like I'm not a big maths nerd, but I know a bunch of other people are, and that's something I've seen a bunch of people do, and with System or with Bionicle, is they'll just sort of play around with parts and make some funky geometric shapes with them, and kind of play off of their mathematical knowledge of geometry and stuff like that, and make dodecahedrons and massive sort of structures and things. And that can be quite fun, especially if you're a little bit more into maths, and that could be something that you excel at. And so there's no reason to apply some of your other interests and loves into what you're building, and maybe you kind of understand that sort of geometry a bit, and you go, actually, maybe I could work in a this funky mathematical shape or equation, or I'm going to use Pythagoras' theorem to blah blah blah, blah, and somehow you get some interesting shapes or different angles or stuff in your mocks because you're dang good at maths. Again, that's another thing of where inspiration can come from in weird places. I don't know. I just looking at that geometric shape, I'm like, that's super cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When those triaxle pieces came out, I remember like one of the first things I wanted to do was like build exactly that kind of dome, like this big sphere out of it, and I just haven't had enough of them to ever do it, and so it's kind of cool seeing that he's actually got one built here. I can see kind of how it looks like, and it's shocked at how big it is.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and actually that's another thing too is like I once did a project at uni where because I have a Spider-Man costume, and I used it for one of the projects kind of thing, and one of the teachers specifically was like, with this project, like play to your strengths. If you have an expensive Spider-Man costume, use it in your project. Or like maybe you collect Hujima sets, put that in your project, because if you've got them, why not play off of them? And so it's that thing of maybe you have, much like Dylan here, you have a bunch of triaxles and other various connector pieces to make a big dodecahedron thing like that. Do that. If you have a bunch of certain pieces and you feel pretty confident that you could use them to your advantage, do so. Because Mitch was talking before about like not wanting to do certain things with the contest because that will put other people at a disadvantage. Play to your strengths. If you have bulk of a certain color or bulk of a certain piece, or you're really good at this one technique, make sure to put that in your mock, because if that's your strengths, be sure to play to them, because then you'll be doing the best you can,
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
For sure, yeah. Anything else you wanted to touch upon with this mock?
Yeah, I think just one more thing. I like the use of these Mars mission tubes around the base of it. It kind of helps. I think it kind of helps push all the buildings in, kind of gets them a little more compact. But you can also kind of see it as like a sort of like a subway system that connects the whole city, at least on the outside. And then like that coupled with the central tower, it's like it sort of has like this quality to it where it's like a bit like a practicality, where it's like there's no part of the city that isn't reachable from wherever you happen to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially with the fact this is the sub-theme of utopia, like, you can totally imagine that, a utopia city like this, they've very much put a lot of thought into, how people navigate the city, and, the idea that there is this set area for the public transport, and then this big tower in the middle and stuff. Like, it makes sense that there wouldn't be any sort of areas where it's like, oh, this wasn't really that well designed, but, we live with that, it's okay. It's like, no, this is a utopia, like, everything in this city is perfect. So, we've accounted for that kind of thing. And that's very clever. But it's funny, I like that you said that's a public transport tube, because now that you've said that, I agree. But initially I was like, oh, it's like the, those like transport tubes in Futurama, like the, the big pipes that they all like travel around and stuff. Yeah. But, yeah. And that's the cool thing too, is, you don't have to necessarily go super specific as to what that is. You kind of can leave that up to people's imaginations to some degree, which is cool.
Yeah, you can almost see it as kind of like the Metro Nui shoots, and like you have the Coliseum like right in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
That's super cool. That's right. Very cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so very nice work, Dylan. Let's move on to the final mock here. This is a mock by Vlad Lesin, and it's called the Tengu. Now, again, you picked this one. What did you want to talk about with this guy?
I guess kind of a running theme of this episode is just mocks with presence, but with this one, I think it comes a lot from this, like, the scale of it. I mean, you look at this mock and he's gigantic. Like, those large Antros wings are just dwarfed by the arms.
Yeah.
But so for context, this was made in the 2017 Cup. So it's a little older, and it was the historical period was like feudal Japan. So Vlad built this mythological creature. Tengu are kind of these red-skinned beings. They have these very, very large, exaggerated noses. They have like these big wings on their back. And so that's just what he's created. It's a very straight take on Tengu. And I think it really shines from the techniques being used. Like especially in the head. Like, it's just so... If this mock were just like a bust with the head and maybe like the neck with the prayer beads, I think it would have done well enough just as that. But then he's gone and actually built the rest of it, and it's so powerful looking.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, and I mean, just what you were saying about the bust aspect of it, like how he's played around with all of those sort of like very furry hair-like textures to create this beautiful beard is just impressive enough alone. And that's something to do if you are a pretty quick builder. Like, maybe leave one area sort of towards the end and really dedicate a lot of time to it, because Vlad's a fantastic builder, so that may not have taken him that long, I don't know. But, I know if I was building that, for sure, I would need to be spending a few days on that to make that look just, perfect like it is. So by all means, I would definitely recommend that, is to, use the time effectively and really invest as much time as you can into the techniques and making sure that you really maximize their potential and all that. Because, of course, with the coverage of the show, I'm going to do coverage while the round is going and then cover it when it's finished. But don't rush to post your entry. Like, take your time. By all means, use as much time as you can, but then don't forget to post it in the end. Post it within the last few days so that you can maximize as much time as you can. You can pour as much effort into the techniques that you want to use, and you can just really reach the potential that you're capable of,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, I mean, we have all those, like I said, there's all those ways you can get feedback on your stuff. There's absolutely no need to have your mock entered and put in day one. It's like, once you enter it and once we accept it into the group, I mean, it's locked. You can't change it from there. And if you have something that would improve it, like, I don't know what to tell you. So definitely take your time on your mocks, refine it, make sure it's the best it can be open to feedback, stuff like that. Yeah, agreed. There's no need to rush.
Yeah, exactly that. Going back to the mock, what you were saying before about how seeped in culture this mock is, yeah, that's kind of been a bit of a running theme, at least for the way I've been commenting on these mocks, is just sort of the research that you can put behind it and the sort of justification for your choices and stuff like that. Like, I myself don't know a huge amount about the sort of what this is inspired by and everything, but you can just see how much work and how much research has gone into this because of like the sandals that he's got, the little sort of the kind of Lego rope piece that he's holding there, that of course I'm sure has some significance and everything, and the beads around his neck and stuff like that. Like, you look at it and you just go like, wow, there's so much thought and planning that's definitely gone into this. And even though I myself don't know a lot about it, I can respect that that so much thought has been put into this. And so it's that, if you put that in there, you don't need to write a whole paragraph about I spent 7 hours doing research and blah, blah, blah. Like, your work will show, by all means, 100%. And I think this mock is just a great example of that. Yeah, and just touching upon those sandals, I want to just talk about those again very quickly. It's such a clever little unique design, especially using the claw pieces and the droid arms and stuff like that to create the actual sort of sandal look on the top of the feet there. Such a little nifty, clever design there. It's very cool to see.
Yeah, and even on the bottom of the sandals, it's just using lift arms and the 3-length pins. I mean, it's no more than it needs to be, and it gets that perfect look.
Precisely that. And that too, like you just said, that's exactly what it needs to be. It's that thing of, sometimes the simple solution is literally the best one. Like, if the pressure of the contest is getting to you a little bit, you might be like, no, we've got to have the most amazing technique so the judges will really like it. But here, like Mitch said, very simple technique, but the actual execution and the concept is beautiful and really shines. So by all means, the simple solution might well be exactly what it needs to be. So be careful not to overthink things too much, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in that vein, something I really like about this mock is that it uses a lot of large parts. Like, you look at the torso, and it's got that big Ben 10 torso, and like the pectorals are kind of those big system, like car hoods. And then you have like the shins are Metro torsos, and on the arms you have Enyko legs and Hero Factory armor and Knights Kingdom pieces. Even the shoulders are like Tahoe Mystica masks. And it's like, I like that even though this thing is huge, he's managed to fill up a lot of space by using large parts. So it doesn't have, it's not super, super busy. Like, you got parts of it that are kind of busy, like using the Avmatoran limbs or like the pants with all the black pieces are a little busy. But for the most part, he's using all these very large pieces to like maximize all the space he has to use for it.
Yes, for sure. And also just what you were saying of using that Ben 10 piece there. I always love seeing Ben 10 parts being used on Bionicle mocks because that was such an obscure theme, and it was one very short-lived theme as well. But the pieces in it were very helpful.
Oh yeah.
And just the fact that you can, almost all the time when people use them, even just because they're just less common to see. I just kind of brings a smile to my face seeing them because it is so like different and out there. And do that if you have like Galador pieces or Ben 10 parts or maybe Snap parts or just more obscure Lego themes, whether they're construction related or technique or not. Put them in because you can kind of get away with a nice part use without it actually being a nice part use, just because you go like, oh geez, look, he used that part. Like, I never thought could have used that, or that's a bit more of an obscure part to see. You don't see that every day, kind of thing. And that's kind of it's not cheating. That's entirely the wrong word, but it's that thing of it's kind of a different way of approaching, kind of playing with your pieces in a unique way. So yeah, I like that. Just it's a good Ben 10 parts were good, and it's great to see them on this mock.
Oh yeah, Ben 10 was nice. In retrospect, it's very obvious that it was just kind of there to bridge that little year or half-year gap they had between Bionicle and Hero Factory.
Right.
They really maximized the potential of that. I mean, I agree that the Ben 10 parts are very underrated.
For sure. And I don't know, otherwise, yeah, like you said, really beautiful, menacing, not really menacing, but like powerful stance and silhouette to this mock, and just overall fantastic. Anything else that you wanted to touch upon with this guy?
Yeah, I think just one more thing. You mentioned it earlier, with like using all the feather parts for like his beard and his hair, and I really like how they have all the texture to them, because like he has white in the build in other places, right? Because like kind of where the Tengu has like socks or like something on his arm, but like, and even though those are white also, and his hand is white, they don't look like the same white that's on his face, because the texture of those pieces on his face is very different from the textures of the pieces on his body. And so even though the same color, you can visually identify them as being something different. The stuff on his head is very obviously hair compared to the stuff on his body. And I think that's really, really smart use of texture to give like visual information and character.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, that's what we were talking about with just paying attention to your textures and everything when you're building, and that's something the judges are looking for. That's a very simple way of doing it, but very effective. Is that, you know, the fact that, you know, just because you have it on one part doesn't mean you can't have it on another, but you pay attention that the textures themselves are different, because for sure there could have been a little bit of confusion in the color blocking there, that, you know, oh, does he have hair on his, you know, on his ankles and on that one arm there and on that hand, and it's like, well, no, they're very visually different texture wise, so they've become separate, and so there's no confusion there as to, you know, things don't become messy or busy because the textures are so vastly different. Yeah, that's a good point that you brought that up, and yeah, it's definitely one of the cooler parts of this mock for sure.
It's just a very, very well designed, excellent, brilliant mock. It's no surprise that he went on to win that year's contest.
Definitely, yeah. Hopefully Vlad, because he was in the 2018 Biocup too, wasn't he?
He was. I think who did he lose to? I don't remember. Oh well.
I think it was kind of around the third-ish round that he did drop off.
Okay.
I want to say, yeah, I'm not sure who he lost to either, but still awesome to note that you know, people like Vlad and people like Rock Monster, who've won the last year and the year before, you know, Rock Monster's a judge this year, but, you know, future winners could of course return. Past winners could of course return, and you know, just because they won once doesn't mean they'll necessarily win again. So it's you know, you never know what might happen.
That is very true. It's always different every year.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But yeah, no, I think there's been 3 really awesome mocks that we've seen in the past of Biocup, and also awesome how much of what those mocks embodied really related to, yeah, what you as a judge were looking for, / just what sort of stuff you as a contestant can be aiming for if you, the people listening, are interested in joining the Biocup, which by all means do so. You know, whether it's just you want to just enter round 1, and if you don't go any further than that, then hey, at least you participated. That's all that matters. But yeah, no. So of course, as I'm sure I'll be saying a bunch in the future, and as Mitch has said a few times from now, be sure to check out the Flickr Biocup page for any other details about the contest. If, you know, there's anything we missed, it'll be on the Flickr group, and, you know, stay tuned for future announcements there that are Biocup related. And another thing as well that I definitely want to touch on before we finish is, if you are posting the mock, be sure to hashtag it with Biocup 2019.
Yes, absolutely. Or you can tag it with that, or you can write in the description that it was made for the contest, but either one works. So
perfect. So yeah, otherwise, stay tuned for more Biocup coverage, everybody listening, and hopefully you've been building while you listen to this podcast, and maybe now your Biocup entry is almost ready to be posted or is progressing nicely. And yeah, we'll see you in a future episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series podcast and future episodes of the Biocup coverage. So thank you very much, Mitch, for having me today. Where can people find you if you want to be found?
So I'm on about any social media platform where Lego has a home. But I'm on Flickr, just my name, Mitch Henry, CZQ. I'm on Instagram as Mitch_Henry_CZQ. And those are my 2 main platforms. You can find all my stuff on those.
Perfect. I'll have all the links in the description there as well, so
right.
Be sure to check out Mitch's stuff. He's a great guy.
Thank you.
No worries. But yeah, thanks everyone. See you soon. Bye for now.